when I was younger, when I was at Harvard, my best friend was a boxer. He was a street fighter from Manhattan, a Puerto Rican kid, and wonderful guy. I mean, everyone at school loved him. And then he taught me how to box, and we used to, box in the gym, and I would do this sort of Muhammad Ali imitation because that's what I thought boxing was in 1977. Then he actually had an amateur fight in Lowell, Mass. in March 1977. He got killed in the fight.
Jesus.
And of course, me being young and stupid, it's not enough to prevent me from continuing. So when I moved to New York...
Did you watch the fight?
Yeah, we were there.
You were there?
We didn't know.
What happened to him?
He danced into a right hook and went over backwards like it was frozen, like it was a plank of wood, and his head bounced off the mat. That's how I remember it. God knows if my memory is right.
It's one of the scariest things is when the head bounces.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst ways to get knocked out.
Yeah, and we knew it was bad, but we didn't know. He didn't die. He was in a coma. They took him to the hospital. We went all home. And then a week later, there's just no brain activity, and this is how I remember it. I hope I'm doing him justice by getting the memory right. Of course, nowadays you can Google it and read about the article in the Boston Globe, and there was an article. Anyway, I moved to New York. I go to journalism school. I have a friend who is Norman Mailer's nephew. And Norman Mailer had a group of people who used to get together at the Gramercy Gym on Saturday mornings in New York. This is another long-winded answer to your question.
Don't worry about that.
I mean, talk about shaggy dog story. So every Saturday morning, we'd meet at the Gramercy Gym, which is 14th and around Lexington. Back then, it was a very seedy neighborhood, and it was,
classic gym.
Yeah, classic
gyms in boxing.
And some really, like Ryan O'Neal was buddies with Norman, would show up once every 3 months. And there was a guy who ran, I forget, it was a porn magazine that was sold in a brown paper bag. He would show up, and then a half dozen other people. I had this friend, Steve Chow, went on to become Barry Diller's right-hand man, and Hollywood, who had actually been the valedictorian of our class at Harvard. And we would spar, and I enjoyed it. I got into it, and I was getting the crap beat out of me first. But eventually I kept doing it, and then I decided to fight in the New York Golden Gloves and write about it for Playboy. So the piece was called Life is a Standing 8 Count.
I'm sorry, but this is after your friend died.
This is after my friend died.
Wow.
So anyway, the point is kind of like going from sparring to your first match. Now, you had a much more successful career than I did. I had 2 fights, and I won the first one because the Irish cop I was fighting got tired of punching me, and I finally thought if I hit him back, maybe that'll slow him down, and it worked. But that transition from sparring to being in the ring and having someone want to beat the crap out of you is like you cannot conceive of what it's going to be like until you do it, right?
Right.
I mean, if you can remember back to your first fight, and you might have been more of a natural animal than I am. I'm kind of a cerebral guy. I think too much. But that's what it was like getting this article published. Like, I knew it was going to be controversial. You want me to tell you the end of the boxing story?
Sure.
I won my first fight, knocked out this cop from Staten Island, and I was done. I didn't want to do it again. I didn't enjoy winning. I did not enjoy knocking him out. I didn't like anything about it. This nose was not built for getting pummeled, and I was not a very good defensive fighter. And then the second fight, I went up against the guy who won it. This was not the open category, the 10 fights or less category, and he knocked me out in 1 minute and 37 seconds. I had a friend a photographer for life, who came. Norman Mailer was at the fight, too. Like, Norman sitting there watching me get the crap beat out of me. And my friend, who was a photographer, didn't have time to get her lens cap off, basically. She, so I have a photo that ran in Playboy with the article, which was, you could see ring level, and you see these 2 big feet sticking up and this body prone on the ring,
Did you get knocked unconscious?
Yeah.
When you woke up, how terrified were you? Were you thinking at all about your friend who died?
No, that's the funny thing, not at all. But
Wow.
I thought about it afterwards. So it's interesting. Apparently, I woke up in the ring. I mean, I stood up. They raised the other guy's hand. I don't remember any of that. Do
you remember the fight at all?
A little bit of like these roundhouses whizzing by my head. And I had this tendency, I would like pull my head back, so I'm pulling my hands down instead of...
Terrible instinct, but natural for some strange reason.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to teach people to not do the worst thing.
Yeah, and if my career had lasted past that fight, my very good coach would have broken it out, and he would have said, "Oh, don't ever do that again." And anyway, my memory is I'm sitting outside the ring, and a doctor is saying to me, "Do you know what your name is? Do you know what?" So there's a period in my life where I was clearly conscious, but I have no memory of it. Then they make you go to the hospital afterwards to make sure you're not going to die overnight. And I was in the emergency room, and there was a guy next to me who had a motorcycle accident, and a cab had cut him off, and he had the same. We were talking. He was about my age, Hispanic, and he, this thing where there's, the way you say the next thing I remember,
right?
And then there's this awareness that there could it could very well have never been a next thing I remember. The moment could have just ended there, and that's when I started thinking about my friend. But I was too busy getting mad at the hospital attendant who kept telling me that my nose was broken. And I kept saying, my nose isn't broken, asshole. This is the nose I was born with. No, man, that's a broken nose. I know a broken nose when I see one.